condemned the behaviour of the hooligans and was giving the French police its full support.
Marseille tonight, its historic port shrouded in tear gas after England fans went on the rampage. Hundreds of police officers wearing full riot gear tried to corral the so-called supporters into one area of the street, but fights broke out and there was a constant hail of bottles and other missiles. As they retreated, they destroyed shops and other business premises. This cafe was smashed while the owners and their children were still inside.
Faut les tuer, faut les tuer.
Were you inside your shop when this happened?
Hooligan attack corner cafe. The name is English name. No, they attack and they broke all. It's terrible. Terrible.
As the crowds become increasingly difficult to control, more riot police have been brought in. The England fans are now corralled at one end of the street and are moving towards the police. At the same time, violence broke out in other parts of the square. There was mayhem with unrestrained fights between rival fans. The police moved in to make a series of arrests in a desperate attempt to maintain some kind of control. Tonight, as fans burned the Tunisian flag, the FA's security advisor described the violence as a national disgrace. These are the scenes which have destroyed a World Cup dream for an England team which has yet to kick a ball. Paul Newman, BBC News, Marseille.
We'll be getting the latest from Marseille at the end of this news. The Conservative Party has threatened to end its consensus with the government on Northern Ireland by voting against part of the Stormont peace agreement. The party wants a guarantee that some terrorist weapons will be decommissioned before the early release of paramilitary prisoners. The government said those criticisms had already been addressed.
Plans for the early release of terrorist prisoners were always one of the sticking points for Ulster Unionists before the Easter signing of the Northern Ireland peace agreement.
Welcome home, comrades.
Anxieties among Unionists were heightened when IRA prisoners were allowed to attend a Sinn Féin conference in the run-up to the referendum, and there were demands then for terrorist weapons to be handed in before any prisoners were released. Pledges given personally by Tony Blair were said to have swayed many voters, but the Conservatives claimed the bill being debated in the Commons fails to ensure that the arms decommissioning will have started before prisoners are let out.
The bill is fatally flawed. It doesn't stick to the agreement. It isn't what the people bought when they were voting for it in the referendum. And frankly, if the bill is not amended, the people of Northern Ireland have been badly misled.
Deputy Speaker.
Ulster Unionist MPs voted against the second reading of the bill last Wednesday because prisoner releases weren't tied to the progressive abandonment of paramilitary structures, as the Prime Minister promised, and they've welcomed backing from the Conservatives.
That's the role of a proper opposition in Parliament. And I think the Conservative Party, along with the Ulster Unionist Party, are operating as an effective opposition in holding the government to the pledges they have made.
The Tory party has demonstrated duplicity and bad faith and have colluded with the most reactionary elements within unionism throughout this entire process. There is no linkage in the Good Friday document in the manner in which they are arguing.
If the Conservatives carry out their threat on Thursday to vote against the prisoners' release bill, it would break the long-standing parliamentary consensus over Northern Ireland. It wouldn't say the Tories mean an end to their support for the peace agreement, but it could have a destabilising effect ahead of the elections for the Northern Ireland Assembly in 10 days' time. Nicholas Jones, BBC News, Westminster.
Strathclyde police say they found the body of 5-year-old Ernest Barry, who's been missing from his home in Glasgow. Police divers discovered the body in the River Clyde earlier this evening. Ernest Barry disappeared from his home in the Gorbals area of the city on Friday evening. 120 police officers have been involved in the search. 5 Scottish fishermen are feared drowned after their trawler, the Silvery Sea, went down in the North Sea. The search for survivors was called off this afternoon. The boat from Mallaig in northwest Scotland collided with a German ship off Esbjerg in Denmark early this morning in calm seas.
The collision happened in good weather and visibility in the North Sea fishing grounds used by many Scottish trawlers throughout the year. The Silvery Sea was on passage to the Danish port of Esbjerg to land her catch of sand eels when she collided with a German coaster. Throughout the day, 2 helicopters and a small flotilla of vessels have been searching a 16-mile area of water for signs of the missing crew. But the operation's now been called off and there's little hope for them.
After 5 hours we had made a very intensive search in the area, and we didn't find anything but 2 rafts without any persons in it. We located some small wreckage in the area.
4 of the missing crew came from fishing communities in and around the town of Mallaig on Scotland's northwest coast, where the trawler was based. It's a close-knit community, not unfamiliar with fishing tragedies, but the loss has stunned local people.
This is the sort of thing that fishermen and fishing communities, I guess they'll live with it day by day and hope that something like this will never ever happen. But when it does, the community draws close together.
While Mallaig tries to come to terms with its loss, the German vessel involved in the collision is also heading for port, where the crew will be questioned about the incident. Andrew Castle, BBC News, Glasgow.
European leaders have been arriving in Cardiff ahead of tomorrow's EU summit. The meeting's likely to be dominated by German demands that its contributions to the EU budget be reduced. Earlier, thousands of farmers marched through the city to protest against European laws they say are ruining rural life, and they're worried that some countries will block plans to lift the ban on British beef. Aid agencies dealing with refugees who fled from Kosovo to northern Albania say they're worried about the slow pace of the relief effort and have warned it will be a long and difficult job to get the aid through. Kosovo forms the southwestern corner of Serbia. The majority of people there are of Albanian descent and want some degree of autonomy. Thousands have fled the latest violence and crossed into Albania, which it's feared could be drawn into the conflict.
If salvation is on its way, there is little sense of it here. Bad weather has closed in around the mountains of northern Albania, making an already dangerous journey even worse. Still, the refugees keep coming. The newest arrivals say the Serb onslaught is continuing. That's been confirmed by international observers. As this family fled, there was terror close behind them. They told us they were targeted with grenades as they made for the border. Time is running out here. Medical supplies are all but exhausted in the town of Tropoja, where many of the refugees find sanctuary. The local doctor is working around the clock, but says if the refugees keep coming, he'll need a miracle. Tomorrow, NATO will be flaunting its military strength in the skies over this region, but what that will mean on the ground is uncertain, and that's where the conflict is actually being played out. No one here is predicting an immediate breakthrough. Many fear there may be no more than a temporary lull in the fighting. Orla Guerin, BBC News, Northern Albania.
Jamaica have lost their opening match of the World Cup, going down 3-1 to Croatia. Wimbledon's Robbie Earle was the scorer for the Jamaicans, the first goal the West Indian side had ever scored in the World Cup finals. Earlier in the day, Argentina beat Japan 1-0 and Yugoslavia won by the same score against Iran.
The Cinderellas of the tournament had arrived at the ball. Jamaica were playing in the World Cup finals for the first time ever, the smallest nation to qualify in 60 years. But the fairy tale looked to end rather quickly, Croatia threatening to score long before Stanic picked up the rebound. And it could have been many more when just before half-time, Robbie Earle, more often seen playing for Wimbledon, became the hero of the Caribbean. But there was to be no victory salute for Jamaica, Prosinec's cross becoming a shot which crept in the corner. And the Croats' third again owed much to luck, Davor Šuker's strike taking a kindly deflection. There were brave performances from two of the tournament's other new faces, Japan matching Argentina closely, only to be beaten by the arch predator Gabriel Batistuta. Iran also lost to marksmanship of the highest class, Mihailovic's free kick duping the goalkeeper and giving Yugoslavia victory. But Iran had plenty of opportunities to equalise, none more gilt-edged than this header by Dali. Ben Munro-Davis, BBC News.
Now back to tonight's main news. English football fans have been involved in violent clashes with French police and other fans in Marseille on the eve of England's World Cup match against Tunisia. Our correspondent Paul Newman is in Marseille. Paul, what's the situation now?
Well, Peter, we understand this evening that around 100 fans have been arrested, most of them English. They've been taken to the nearby police station, and of course we're expecting them to be charged forthwith. I think this has to be one of the darkest days for English football. Remember, this was a town that was trying to welcome the English, but tonight the faces of those French people who'd seen their businesses destroyed before their very eyes said it all.
Does the behaviour of the fans have any consequences for the presence in the competition of the national team?
Well, if you talk to the people here, yes, it most certainly would. But Sir Brian Hayes, who's the FA's security advisor, in a statement this evening, said there was no question of England withdrawing from the World Cup. He said that was rubbish, that was nonsense. However, I'm sure there are people here in Marseille tonight who would feel differently and strongly differently.
Will the fans be segregated tomorrow in the stadium, Paul?
Well, this is a big question, Peter. The match should be taking place tomorrow afternoon in the stadium behind me. But a lot of black market tickets have been sold. We know somewhere in the region of 3,000 to 4,000 so far, and many of the England fans here who are still here tonight are hoping to get black market tickets tomorrow morning. So the question of segregation and security, I think, is one for tomorrow.
Paul Newman in Marseille, thank you. And that's all from the BBC Newsroom tonight. Good night.
For the last time here on BBC One Wales, here's Ian McCaskill with the weather.
Hello, Flaming June lives, but only in the Hebrides, 16 hours today. I think I shall have to go and check up on that one. The rest of us, a murky night, rain over central and eastern districts, quite a lot of low cloud as well, and really quite cold and breezy in the north. The Scottish Glens, 2 Celsius, inland parts of Northern Ireland, 3 Celsius. A touch of frost is just possible in places, not elsewhere. Another cloudy day tomorrow. Further outbreaks of rain over central and eastern parts of Britain. Still the chance of a rumble of thunder in the south. The best of any brightness, western Scotland, Northern Ireland, western parts of England and Wales. Even here, 1 or 2 showers do seem possible. And it'll still be cool and breezy in the north. Scotland, Northern England, 12 to 14 Celsius. Northern Ireland, 17 Celsius. England and Wales a little bit better, 17 to 18 possibly Celsius in a few blessed parts in the south. The outlook, fewer showers, more in the way of sunshine and high pressure, I think, giving more in the way of bright weather by the middle of the week. That's it. Good night, goodbye.
The legend of King Arthur is vividly told on BBC Two Wales in 15 minutes. Nigel Terry and Helen Mirren had a strong cast for Excalibur.
For 14 years, over 1,500 calls a month, over 550 arrests, all down to you. Tuesday night, 10:20 on BBC One Wales, Crime Watch UK, your stand against crime. June 1998, and Wales hosts the European Summit. Wales Today will bring comprehensive coverage with updates throughout the day, live from City Hall. Week in, week out has a special debate chaired by Vincent Kane, exploring Wales's future in Europe. All the news and background information will be online from the BBC Summit website. Reach the summit with BBC Wales.
And we continue going continental in 50 minutes here on BBC One Wales, with the contrasting opinions of 2 other Europeans on Wales. 2 kisses for a sleeping beauty. Behind the scenes of the burial business, first on BBC One Wales, as everyone meets the men and women who work for the Brighton and Hove Cemetery and Bereavement Service. For them, humour is a saving grace, and death is a way of life. Some viewers may find some of the scenes in the programme disturbing.